One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that persistence always earns respect. We grow up hearing that if you keep trying, keep proving yourself, keep showing how much you care, eventually people will recognize your value. That idea may work in mastering a skill or building a business, but it rarely works in human relationships. In the world of psychology, constant pursuit often communicates the exact opposite of what you intend. Instead of saying, "I value you," it quietly says, "I do not value myself enough to walk away." That is the uncomfortable truth many people spend years avoiding. Every time you chase someone who repeatedly ignores you, you are making an invisible transaction. You are exchanging your time, your emotional energy, your attention, and your peace of mind for the possibility of receiving validation. The tragedy is that validation gained through pursuit is rarely satisfying because it was earned through surrendering your own dignity. Deep inside, you know the difference between someone choosing you freely and someone responding simply because you refused to leave them alone. Power has always been connected to choice. The person who has the freedom to walk away possesses a form of psychological strength that cannot be imitated. The person who believes they cannot lose someone has already surrendered that strength. This is why powerful individuals appear calm. Their confidence does not come from controlling others, it comes from controlling themselves. Think carefully about how scarcity works in every area of life. Rare things are valuable because they are not constantly available. Diamonds are admired because they are scarce. Exclusive opportunities attract attention because not everyone has access to them. Human attention follows a remarkably similar pattern. When your attention becomes unlimited, when it is offered without boundaries, when people know they can ignore you today and still have you tomorrow, its perceived value begins to decline. This does not happen because people are cruel. It happens because human nature often fails to appreciate what is guaranteed. Many people misunderstand this principle and assume the answer is to play games. They withdraw affection to manipulate others or create artificial distance to provoke jealousy. But genuine strength has nothing to do with manipulation. It is not about pretending not to care. It is about actually reaching a place where your peace is more important than someone's inconsistent attention. There is an enormous psychological difference between silence chosen as a strategy and silence born from self-respect. The first is manipulation. The second is freedom. When someone repeatedly ignores your messages, overlooks your efforts, or treats your presence as optional, your instinct may be to try harder. You convince yourself they simply do not understand your intentions. You believe one more explanation, one more act of kindness, or one more sacrifice will finally make them appreciate you. But human behavior rarely changes because of increased availability. More often, it changes because people experience consequences. And one of the greatest consequences anyone can experience is the quiet absence of someone they underestimated. Notice something about confident people. They do not announce their departure. They do not threaten to leave. They simply redirect their energy. There is dignity in that silence because it says, "I respect myself enough not to compete for a place in someone's life." That mindset changes everything. Instead of asking, "Why don't they appreciate me?" you begin asking, "Why am I investing so much in someone who has already shown me their priorities?" The quality of your life depends largely on the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Most emotional suffering is prolonged because we ask questions that keep us trapped. We ask how to convince someone, how to impress someone, how to become impossible to ignore. Rarely do we ask whether their attention deserves our effort in the first place. Psychology teaches us that people often reveal their priorities not through promises but through patterns. Anyone can speak beautiful words. Patterns tell the truth. If someone consistently creates time for others but never for you, that is information. If someone only contacts you when they need something, that is information. If your presence is welcomed only when it is convenient, that is information. The emotionally mature person learns to observe without becoming bitter. Bitterness keeps you emotionally attached. Clarity sets you free. This is why self-respect is one of the most attractive qualities a person can possess. Self-respect creates boundaries. Boundaries create standards. Standards create value. Without standards, people unconsciously teach others how little they expect to be valued. Imagine carrying a priceless work of art through a crowded street. You would protect it carefully because you recognize its worth. Yet many people treat their own time, attention, and emotional energy with far less care than they would treat a valuable object. They hand them out freely, hoping generosity alone will create appreciation. But appreciation does not come from endless availability. It comes from recognized value. Recognized value begins with how you value yourself. The irony is that the moment you stop chasing people is often the moment you finally begin seeing them clearly. You notice who reaches out voluntarily. You notice who remembers you without reminders. You notice who invests in you with the same consistency you once offered everyone else. That clarity is priceless because it saves years of emotional exhaustion. There is another truth few people are willing to confront. Sometimes the reason you keep chasing someone has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with the story you have created in your own mind. You become attached not to reality but to potential, not to who they are but to who you hope they might become. Hope is beautiful when it inspires growth. It becomes dangerous when it blinds you to reality. The strongest individuals know when to stop investing in fantasies and start investing in facts. Facts are peaceful because they require no interpretation. Actions speak, silence speaks, consistency speaks. You do not need endless explanations when behavior has already given you the answer. From this moment forward, stop measuring your worth by the attention you receive. Measure it by the respect you refuse to compromise. Every unnecessary pursuit weakens your position, but every step towards self-respect strengthens your identity. The moment you stop chasing those who ignore you is the moment you begin attracting the life, opportunities, and relationships that recognize your value without being convinced. If you truly want, stop chasing people who ignore you. There is a shift you must make that changes everything. You must stop treating indifference as an emotional wound and begin treating it as information. This sounds simple, but very few people have the discipline to do it. The average person experiences silence as rejection. The emotionally intelligent person experiences silence as data. One reacts, the other observes. That difference determines the quality of your relationships, your decisions, and ultimately your peace of mind. Human beings have an extraordinary ability to invent stories in the absence of certainty. Someone doesn't return your message, and your mind immediately begins filling in the blanks. Maybe they're busy, maybe they're overwhelmed, maybe they're testing you, maybe you said something wrong. Before long, you are no longer responding to reality. You are responding to a narrative you created yourself. The mind dislikes uncertainty because uncertainty feels unsafe. So it manufactures explanations to regain a sense of control. But those explanations are often rooted in emotion rather than evidence. This is why emotionally mature people discipline themselves to separate facts from assumptions. The fact is simple. They didn't respond. Everything else is interpretation. This is one of the greatest forms of psychological freedom you can develop. When you stop interpreting every act of indifference as a personal attack, You stop handing strangers control over your emotional state. You become calmer, more observant, and surprisingly more powerful. Think about the greatest strategists throughout history. They were rarely driven by emotion in moments of uncertainty. They watched, they listened, they gathered information before making decisions. Their strength came not from reacting quickly, but from understanding clearly. Your personal relationships deserve the same discipline. When someone consistently ignores you, they are communicating something, even if they never say a word. Human behavior always communicates priorities. Words can be rehearsed. Promises can be exaggerated. Excuses can be endless, but patterns rarely lie. Someone who genuinely values your presence may occasionally become busy. Life happens, responsibilities increase, unexpected circumstances arise, but there is a significant difference between occasional absence and consistent indifference. One is temporary, the other is a pattern. Your responsibility is not to judge people harshly. Your responsibility is simply to recognize reality without resisting it. Many people stay trapped because they confuse acceptance with defeat. They believe accepting someone's lack of interest means admitting they were not good enough. In reality, acceptance is an act of emotional intelligence. It is recognizing what exists instead of fighting for what does not. Reality is always less painful than illusion. Illusion keeps hope alive long after evidence has disappeared. The philosopher once observed that suffering often comes not from events themselves, but from our interpretation of them. That wisdom remains timeless. When someone ignores you, the pain is often amplified by the meaning you attach to their behavior. You tell yourself, I must not matter. I'm not interesting enough. I need to become someone they cannot ignore. Notice how quickly the conversation shifts away from their actions and toward your identity. That is the trap. Someone's inability or unwillingness to appreciate you should never become evidence against your own worth. Different people recognize value differently. Some recognize loyalty, others exploit it, some admire honesty. Others are intimidated by it, some celebrate your growth, others quietly resent it. Their response reveals their perspective far more than it reveals your value. This realization frees you from one of the most exhausting habits in life, trying to convince people to see what they have already chosen to overlook. You cannot negotiate genuine appreciation. You cannot persuade someone into consistent respect. You cannot argue another person into valuing your presence. Respect that has to be begged for is never respect. It is temporary compliance. This is why emotional detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. Detachment simply means refusing to allow your emotions to distort reality. You can care deeply about people while still seeing their actions honestly. In fact, the strongest relationships are built on clear vision, not blind hope. Ask yourself an uncomfortable question. How much of your emotional energy has been spent trying to change people instead of understanding them? There is a profound difference. Trying to change people keeps you trapped in expectation. Understanding people allows you to make wise decisions. When you truly understand someone's priorities, you stop expecting them to become someone they have consistently shown they are not. And something remarkable begins to happen. Instead of chasing unavailable people, you start noticing available ones. Instead of obsessing over one closed door, you begin seeing the many open doors that were always there. Instead of forcing conversations, you enjoy mutual ones. Instead of wondering where you stand, you surround yourself with people who make your place in their lives obvious. Peace enters your life not because everyone suddenly treats you well, but because you stop investing your emotional energy where it is not returned. Imagine carrying a bucket of water across a desert while unknowingly pouring half of it into dry sand. No matter how hard you work, you will remain thirsty because your effort is constantly leaking away. That is what emotional chasing does. It drains your confidence, it steals your focus. It consumes the energy that could have been invested in your purpose, your health, your family, your friendships, and your future. Every moment spent trying to earn unwilling attention is a moment stolen from becoming the person you are capable of becoming. The truly powerful understand that attention is not the ultimate currency. Energy is. Your energy determines your creativity. Your energy determines your discipline. Your energy determines your ability to build a meaningful life. Guard it carefully, invest it wisely, and never spend it where there is no return. As you begin observing instead of reacting, you will notice another unexpected change. You become emotionally predictable to yourself. You are no longer controlled by delayed replies, inconsistent behavior, or mixed signals. You stop checking your phone every few minutes. You stop analyzing every word. You stop waiting for someone else's decision to determine your mood. That is freedom, not because the world has changed, because you have. When your emotional stability no longer depends on another person's attention, you reclaim something far more valuable than their approval. You reclaim your peace. And once peace becomes your foundation, your choices become wiser, your standards become higher, and your relationships become healthier. So the next time someone ignores you, resist the urge to chase, resist the urge to explain, persuade, or prove your worth. Simply observe, let their actions speak, let reality guide you. Every moment of indifference is not a verdict against your value. It is a lesson directing your attention toward where it truly belongs. By now, you've seen the cost of chasing people who ignore you. You've recognized that every unnecessary pursuit quietly diminishes your sense of self, and you've learned that indifference is not always a personal insult, it is often valuable information. But knowing when to stop chasing is only half of the transformation. The other half is deciding where your energy belongs once you let go. This is where most people make another mistake. They stop chasing one person only to begin chasing someone else. The pattern changes, but the mindset remains the same. They continue searching outside themselves for the validation they have never learned to create within. As long as your happiness depends on someone else's attention, you remain emotionally dependent, no matter who that person is. Real freedom begins when your focus shifts from being noticed to becoming remarkable. There is a profound difference between wanting attention and creating value. Attention is temporary. It comes and goes with trends, emotions, and circumstances. Value, however, has permanence. A person of value does not have to demand respect. Their character, discipline, and quiet confidence make respect the natural response. Consider the people who leave a lasting impression on your life. Chances are, it wasn't because they constantly sought your approval. They stood out because they had substance, they had purpose, they possessed an inner stability that didn't fluctuate with every opinion or every rejection. They carried themselves with calm certainty, and that certainty became magnetic. Human beings are naturally drawn to those who seem complete within themselves. This does not mean becoming arrogant or emotionally distant. It means reaching a point where your identity is no longer built upon external applause. The strongest individuals appreciate recognition, but they do not require it to know who they are. That is the difference between confidence and dependency. Confidence says, I know my worth, even if not everyone sees it. Dependency says, I will not believe in my worth until someone else confirms it. One creates freedom. The other creates endless pursuit. Think about how much time people waste trying to remain in the minds of others. They wonder who viewed their profile, who liked their photo, who replied to their message, who forgot their birthday, who stopped calling. Days, months, and sometimes years disappear in silent battles for attention. Meanwhile, life continues moving forward. Dreams remain unbuilt, skills remain undeveloped, health declines, purpose fades into the background. The greatest tragedy is not that someone ignored you. The greatest tragedy is allowing that person to distract you from becoming who you were capable of becoming. Every hour spent chasing validation is an hour stolen from your future. Imagine investing that same energy differently. Instead of rereading unanswered messages, you read books that sharpen your thinking. Instead of wondering why someone doesn't appreciate you, you improve your physical health. Instead of trying to earn invitations into someone else's world, you build a life so meaningful that others naturally become curious about yours. This is the quiet power of self-investment. It compounds over time. A single workout changes little. Hundreds transform a body. One book may inspire you. Hundreds reshape your perspective. One disciplined decision seems insignificant. Thousands redefine your identity. This is how respected people are created, not through dramatic moments, but through consistent habits repeated in private. Ironically, the people who stop chasing attention often receive more of it than those desperately seeking it. Why? Because purpose has a magnetic quality. People are intrigued by individuals who are fully engaged in building something meaningful. They sense emotional independence. They recognize someone who values their own time. That quiet confidence communicates something words never could. It says, "My life has direction. Direction is attractive. Desperation is exhausting." You will also notice something else as you continue growing. Some of the very people who once ignored you may eventually return. They may reach out unexpectedly. They may suddenly become interested in your life. This happens more often than people realize, but here is where wisdom becomes essential. Do not mistake renewed attention for genuine respect. Sometimes people return because they recognize your growth. Sometimes they return because they sense your absence, and sometimes they return simply because their other options disappeared. Only consistent behavior reveals genuine intention. Remember what we discussed earlier: patterns tell the truth. Do not allow loneliness to erase the lessons that experience worked so hard to teach you. Growth is not proven by attracting old attention. Growth is proven by making better choices when old opportunities reappear. This requires emotional discipline. You no longer ask, "Do they want me?" Instead, you ask, "Do they deserve access to the person I have become?" That single question changes everything. It transforms you from someone seeking acceptance into someone exercising discernment. Discernment is one of the rarest forms of strength. Anyone can open every door. Wisdom knows which doors should remain closed. Another important truth deserves your attention. Not everyone who walks away creates a loss. Some departures create space, space for healthier friendships, space for deeper love, space for greater opportunities, space for discovering parts of yourself that constant emotional struggle kept hidden. Nature itself understands this principle. Trees release dead leaves long before new growth appears. They do not cling to what no longer serves them. They trust that letting go creates room for renewal. Human beings often do the opposite. We cling to expired relationships, outdated identities, and impossible expectations because familiarity feels safer than change. Yet every meaningful transformation requires release. You cannot carry unnecessary emotional weight forever and still expect to climb higher. Eventually, you must decide which matters more, your attachment to the past or your commitment to your future. The answer determines the direction of your life. As your purpose becomes stronger, something remarkable happens. You stop measuring success by who notices you. You begin measuring success by who you are becoming. The opinions that once consumed your thoughts lose their influence. Rejection loses its ability to define you. Silence loses its power to intimidate you, not because people changed, because you did. You have learned to build your identity on something far more stable than approval. You have built it on character, on discipline, on purpose, on self-respect. These foundations cannot be taken away by someone's indifference. And that is real power. So from this day forward, let your energy flow toward building rather than begging. Build your mind until your wisdom commands respect. Build your body until your discipline becomes visible. Build your character until your integrity speaks before you do. Build your purpose until your days become too meaningful to waste chasing people who have already shown you where you stand. One day people may notice your absence. They may wonder where you went. They may finally recognize the value they overlooked. But by then, your greatest victory will not be that they came looking for you. Your greatest victory will be that you no longer needed them to.